more things get shot down over the American North, whether it be over Lake Huron, over Canada, or over Alaska. So we'll be talking a bit about that and what this means, and the shutting down of airspace over northern Michigan, which I don't know if it is related or not. So stay tuned. We'll go over some of that and what that means. An Ohio train derailed last week, and almost nobody paid attention to what was happening with that. But with that being said, we are going to take a look at that now that it's come out in the open and some of the reaction to this and whether or not this town actually survives. So we'll go over some of that and what's happening there. Judge in Fulton County rules that parts of the grand jury report are going to be released. So we'll talk about the importance of that and what that means and where we go. And Elon Musk restricts Starlink for Ukraine, citing that Zelensky could use it to start World War III. It is going to be all this and more. I got more votes than Kevin McCarthy. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar, and we have got an absolute ton to go over here today. I put up the title jokingly, did anything happen over the weekend? Because, we're 40 tabs, and it was funny because we had almost no tabs for the Friday show. We had been all caught up with everything, and even taking a short Contemporary for the State of the Union this past week. Still, we were able to catch up on everything, and then this weekend happened. So we're going to go over all of it over there. Reminder, because it looks like Sully and then another person had jumped in over on the Instagram side. If you are watching this over on Instagram, you're only getting half the program. So hit the link in the bio over to the YouTube channel, or I have DLive and Twitch too as well. Go over there and head onto those there where you can see we will have the news up in a corner above me, so you'll be able to see what it is that I'm reading as we're reading along. We'll be watching some video there. I cannot transmit that out to Instagram, so come back in and get your full evening news over here on Contemporary. But before we get started, make sure you guys go check out great programming such as The Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, The Porch Boys. Go check out Tweets by Brit, Mr. Behavior, The No Gimmicks Podcast, and more as we come together to bring you a better news experience. That is right. For too long, we all got all of our news from people who wear suits that cost more than our houses. We don't need to get our news from people like that. Go check out great programming such as them. These are people who have had to make some of the same decisions that you are. Some of them might even be your very best friends. So go check all that out. It's going to be a great time over there with all those programs as we bring you news from the common man for the common man. And with that, let's get into the news here because we got a lot to go over here, and I got a little bit of a late start just trying to organize all these damn tabs. There's so many up there. And let's get into the news of the day. Let's start as we always do. Oh crap, I'm looking at myself with the Dow. Let's bring this back out here. You can see where I was Google searching there furiously before we go. DLive should be J Edgar 101, I think. Is it 101 or 102? No, I'm sorry. No, DLive is Ed's blog Twitter still. It is still Ed's blog Twitter. No, I haven't changed my DLive name. DLive.tv/Ed's blog Twitter. Twitch.tv is JEdgar101 and YouTube.com/JEdgar101 as well. So go check those out. That's going to be a great time. I already get some people piling in here too, including a new name I haven't seen before. Reminder for the new people as well. I don't catch all the chat on this program just because I try to keep it under 2 hours because one of my friends streams right after this and we try to go over there. So I will catch some of the stuff while it's relevant, but I don't do a live chat centered show. I'm doing better now that I don't have to run off and run to work like I did in my morning show. So I will catch some of your stuff, but I won't catch everything. But come on in, join in, and tell us how you feel. I do take the names down of everybody who chats in the live chat down in the notebook here. It's blank right now because I just set up a news page because nobody has chatted yet this week except for the the three names that we have up there. So, well, we'll get into this and let's get started. Looking at the Dow to start with, the Dow is at 245.93. It was a fairly good rally today, too, up 376.66 points. That is up 1.11%, so it looks like there's some good news on that front. There are some people that are saying that this might be a bubble that's getting ready to pop. I am not going to give you official financial advice, obviously, because, if I say, go invest in this and it tanks, then you can come back out and sue me. So I will give you the information. You can make the decisions on your own, and we'll see what's happening with that. Looking in at your Bitcoin, that looks like that had a bit of a rough day, and we'll pull this out to the 5-day as well and see what happened over the weekend. But it started off strong and it tumbled, and it stayed down, and then it rose up again to come back just above its previous close to 21,810.50. That is up $20.70, or about 0.9%, bringing us out to the 5-day though. And that is less good news looking over the weekend. It did have a rise throughout the weekend, but it quickly fell off as we came into Monday again. So a few things to watch with that. If you've got some Bitcoin, maybe pay attention to where it is that it's invested and what it is that you're doing. And, well, we'll check with that. Looking at your gas prices in Madison, Wisconsin, the same map that we have been using since the start of this program. And looking in and seeing a fairly unchanged set. No, don't want that. We got to come back out here. We don't want to go out to Cottage Grove. Looking in, 306 on the Isthmus, 310 entering the Isthmus, 306 on the west side, 304 on the east side. So it looks like at least one station dropped since the last time we looked. In more local news up to me, we actually had a 10-cent hike in gas prices here. So a little bit of moving and shaking. We'll see what happens with that as we continue to watch this and see where this goes. Let's grab one from Investors Business Daily. See what they're saying about the markets. And then, of course, for 9 days in a row, I have tech layoff news. But first from IBD, Dow Jones climbs more than 1% despite this risk. 3 Warren Buffett stocks eye entries. From Michael Larkin. The Dow closed higher Monday ahead of a key inflation report. AI stock, Microsoft, was a top blue chip. A trio of Warren Buffett stocks are near buy points, including General Motors. Breakouts were thin or on the ground, but Immunocore tested a buy point, while Meritage Homes and Arista Networks are nearing entries. Stocks were recouping some of the last week's losses, despite the fact that the latest CPI report, a measure of key inflation, looms large Tuesday morning. Owanda senior market analyst Edward Moya said investors should not be surprised if the inflation report is very hot amid a rebound in used car and energy prices last month. Risky assets could struggle in a bond market, sees more traders place bets for much more Fed tightening, he said in a note to clients. If tomorrow's report is too hot, Fed swaps could start to fully price in 2 quarter-point rate hikes and be on the fence about a third one. Meanwhile, the yield in benchmark 10-year Treasury notes slid 3 basis points to 3.71%. Oil inched lower, with West Texas Intermediate crude falling less than 1% to trade at just over $79 a barrel. Let's see, the NASDAQ shines, IBD 50 excels, the NASDAQ fared the best out of the major indices, closing up 1.5%. Illumina shined brightest in the index, soared at 9.8%. The S&P also flexed its muscles, rising 1.1%. Former leaderboard stock Generac was among the highlights as it rose 4.8%. The generator maker reported earnings this week. He wasn't logged in, that's why you couldn't find it. Welcome back, Sully. The S&P was nearly closed higher. Technology and consumer discretionary fared best, while energy was the only area to fall. Small caps also rose, with the Russell 2000 finishing the day up 1.1%. Growth stocks fared best, with Innovator IBD 50 ETF gaining 1.6%. Okay, breathe. On the markets today, the Dow had a solid session as it popped nearly 400 points, or 1.1%. Microsoft continued to move higher. Microsoft, which has been bolstered by excitement surrounding AI, rose 3.1%. Microsoft is integrating the technology behind the viral chatbot ChatGPT into its Bing search engine and Edge web browser, 2 things that I will no longer use just for that point. The software stock is now clear of all of its moving averages. MarketSmith analysis shows Microsoft stock is an IBD long-term leader. Its old ally Intel also fared well as it gained 2.7%. Downside action was limited. Chevron and Walt Disney struggled the most, falling 0.6 and 0.4 respectively. So, some things moving on the markets. We don't have futures trading up yet, so we'll move off of this. And the other finance news of the day for 9 days in a row is layoffs. Twilio to lay off about 1,500 employees, or 17% of its workforce. But don't worry, everything's fine, and our economy is apparently booming even with all the layoffs. From Ashley Kaput. Twilio on Monday announced plans to cut around 17% of its workforce, or roughly 1,500 jobs, based on the 8,992 employees reported as of September 30th, 2022. In a company filing with Securities and Exchange Commission, Twilio announced layoffs in a blog post shared on its website. The announcement came after the cloud communication software maker already laid off around 11% of its workforce as part of a restructuring plan in September. This is fine, everything is fine. In an email Monday to employees, CEO Jeff Lawson said the additional cuts were driven by the need to reorganize Twilio in order to succeed. These changes hurt, he wrote. The weeks ahead will be about processing all this change and working together to acclimate to our new structure. Shares of Twilio closed up 2% on Monday. It's always funny to me that I hear this, because they come out and say that they're in such dire straits that they have to dump 1,500 more people on top of the 11% that they already kicked off the payrolls. And yet, they're looking at this and saying, oh, well, hey, this is fine. Hey, they might turn a profit if they lay off all these people. What the investment class truly cares about. Lawson said Twilio is forming two business units to help the company spend less and become more efficient. One unit, Twilio Data and Applications, will be led by Elena Donio, and the second unit, Twilio Communications, will be led by Cosima Shipchandler. Lawson said that when executives were looking at these two business units, it was clear the company had gotten too big, particularly in communications. And I don't know much about Twilio. I know that they had a training program out there, Twilio Quest. It used to get advertised. I think I actually looked into it. I think it's an app that you can get on Android, and I looked into it to just try and see, hey, maybe I could get a backup skill, but I wouldn't think of anybody right now who would want to get into the tech sector. Those people who are in tech right now, in college, I'd be rethinking a few things if I was you. But of course, again, this is not official financial advice. You will have to check and see what is best for you and your people and your family and your portfolio. But with that, we will move on into the main news of the day. We're going to start with a little bit of Super Bowl news. I did not watch the Super Bowl. I think you all knew that. I've not been able to give my money, my attention, and my time to Roger Goodell ever since they did the St. Jacob thing. And remember, I'm not a Kenosha native initially, but I lived there for almost my entire adult life. Actually, we're probably getting to the point where we can say half and half at this point. Man, those last 8 years flew by. Yeah, I lived there from basically age 18 until I was 30, with a couple year break in between when I lived in Boston. Man, those last 8 years flew by. Holy crap. I guess that isn't most of my adult life anymore. But regardless, we will say congratulations to the Chiefs. Dan Stam reporting. After the Eagles' crushing loss in the final moments of Super Bowl, I gotta remember my Roman numerals, 57. In Arizona, fans back home in the center city poured out of bars and parties and onto city streets. Large groups of fans can be seen in Market and Broad Streets following the Birds' 38-35 loss to the Kansas City Chiefs. There were some incidences of vandalism, but for the most part, crowds were not rowdy. However, Skyforce 10 did capture a brief clash between a group of Philadelphia bicycle police officers and a group of people along Broad Street. Philadelphia police later revealed to NBC 10 that one officer was injured but refused medical treatment. At least one person was arrested for assaulting a police officer. Besides the assault arrest, 2 other people were arrested on misdemeanors and 11 were arrested for disorderly conduct during the evening, police told NBC 10, which tells me that this was a fairly mild celebration, compared to what I saw in '07 in Boston when the Red Sox won the World Series, and I became a Red Sox fan until they put the banner out facing the Pike, and then I just couldn't do it anymore. Which that actually hurts a little bit because I was just such a fresh baseball fan. I didn't start watching baseball and paying attention to baseball until I was 23. And I liked watching the Sox because, I got caught up in the pageantry of being in Boston when when they won the series. And I feel like there were a lot more arrests than this. Well, of course, that was a winning one too, so there was that aspect of everything. As far as the Super Bowl goes, just a couple things that I want to touch on with this. Number one, we all knew what was going to happen in the halftime show because we watched the Grammys a week ago. So I wasn't surprised in the least by any of that and some of the things that they were trying to come out and talk about when we were talking about that. And two, the Lift Every Voice, the Black National Anthem. I want to talk about that for just a second. Now, I heard Styx talking about that on his live stream today, and the people in the chat were disagreeing with him. And I have to disagree with Styx myself on this one, because Styx is correct in the fact that the song itself is innocuous. It's a very Christian song, and as he pointed out, the tradcons, the big time, I'm super conservative, those kinds of people should be happy about Lift Every Voice. They should be ecstatic about that. They absolutely should be. He's correct on that. But where I will take a difference with him, and I think a lot of people were trying to point this out in the chat to him, because I was listening to that and he was reading chat along, is it's the division of having two separate national anthems. And the fact that they're saying that it's a national anthem for not everybody. Now, some of this came off with the discovery that people found out that the Star Spangled Banner has a second verse that mentions slavery in it, which means that it must be racist, obviously, which I think that that's crap, honestly. But the thing with the national anthem, and this is the thing for me, is that it should be uniting. It should be everybody's national anthem. There shouldn't be a white national anthem. There shouldn't be a black national anthem. And I don't care so much what the national anthem is. If they decide they need to retire the Star Spangled Banner, I mean, it'll suck because we all know the song so well. And I know a lot of the tradcons, the super conservatives, etc., are going to hate the fact that they're getting rid of the Star Spangled Banner as the national anthem. But the reason behind the national anthem, and this is where I say I don't care what it is the fact that it does need to be a national anthem for everybody. We can't separate people off into little groups like that. We're crumbling as a nation as it is, but to have two separate national anthems means, honestly, it means that we have got two separate nations, and I'm not ready to sit and see the fights that ensue over the fact that there are two national anthems, where people are so alienated that they have to fly under separate banners. The national anthem could be Miley Cyrus's song Party in the USA, for all that it matters. But the important part is that it's everybody's national anthem. That's my piece on that. I actually think Lift Every Voice is a beautiful song. I've listened to it. I don't care to listen to it in the sports sense because of its politicized nature, but in a vacuum, it is a beautiful song. It's an amazing song. If that became the regular national anthem, I'd be okay with that. But we need to stop dividing against each other. That's the important part. And again, as a person who didn't sit down and watch a second of the Super Bowl, I take that back. I watched a little bit of it because I was at my parents'. I was actually at my sister's for most of the day on Sunday and did some copper jacketed therapy because my sister's boyfriend has a nice big range in the front yard. So I did some copper jacketed therapy while I was there. And then I went up and I visited my parents for just a minute before I headed home. And on the way home, I stopped for the first sushi. And I've had a hankering for sushi since like September of last year. And I finally quelled my hankering last night. I stopped in a little sushi place in Redacted. I don't know why I redacted that. You guys, it probably wouldn't be hard for you to figure out where it was, but I'm going to try to keep some of the mystery into it. But I stopped in there and they had the Super Bowl on, and the volume was off and I couldn't hear it, but I could see some of the stuff was going on, and that was probably mid-second quarter. I wasn't paying that close attention. I read a Tom Clancy book while I was there. But you're in public and you can't miss some of this stuff. But as a person who didn't watch, other than those little bit of it, any more of the Super Bowl, I have no comment on the game, the teams, the coaching, the coaches, the players, or even really the halftime show, because I didn't see any of it. But that's where we're at for that. All right, let's talk about ufology. With the blaze to start with. U.S. downs airborne object off Alaskan coast. So this was the first one, and I'm a little bit confused because, again, I had a very busy weekend, and I don't know what I actually missed as far as this stupid story goes. But the way that I've understood the news and read it, and I'm reading some of these most of these articles for the first time with you guys, were there 3 or 2? Because I'm a little confused as to whether or not the one over Lake Huron was the same one as Trudeau announcing, "Oh, hey, I convinced the United States to come up here and shoot it down, and it's a good thing because the balloon can't come into Canadian airspace because it hasn't been vexed yet." So I think I'm going to find out together with you guys here. But let's read from Alex Nitzberg. This is from the 10th. The U.S. downed an object off the coast of Alaska on Friday, according to Pentagon Press Secretary Brigadier General Patrick Ryder and National Security Council Coordinator for Strategic Communications John Kirby. Ryder said that at President Biden's direction, fighter aircraft successfully took down a high-altitude airborne object off the northern coast of Alaska at 1:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time today within U.S. sovereign airspace over U.S. territorial water. I think we might have read this one already, now that they're saying it was the 10th. Yeah, we read about this one on Friday. He said the object, which had been at 40,000 feet, posed a reasonable threat to the safety of civilian flight. He noted that the object's size was around that of a small car. And yeah, at 40,000 feet, you're in regular air traffic lanes too, so... let's have a quick listen to John Kirby and see what he had to say with this. But because we did talk about this one on Friday, we are not going to delve too deep into this one. But I know we didn't listen to Kirby. And it's actually not queued up, so we're not going to listen to Kirby. Never mind. So we knew about this one. This one was entering into Canadian airspace, but didn't quite get there. We were able to get jets scrambled off of the Alaska Air Force Base and knock it down. But coming back here on the 12th. Yesterday. Just in, U.S. military shot down unidentified flying object over Lake Huron moments ago. According, they're citing NBC for this one. A little bit more on this. More F-16 fighter jet downed the octagon-shaped object over Lake Huron at an altitude of 20,000 feet, which, when you're coming down into 20,000 feet, you are getting to a point where the untrained eye can actually start seeing this and making out that it's something that's probably not supposed to be there. You probably don't know what it is yet, but you're probably pretty sure it's not an airplane at that point. Let's read here from ABC. Military shoots down another high-altitude object over Lake Huron, officials say. Looks like they've got some video of this as well. I gotta wonder who's taking the camera shots of this. Let's watch this quick.
News that another high-altitude object was shot down Sunday afternoon over Lake Huron. According to one official, it was shot down by a U.S. military aircraft. Today's incident comes one day after another unidentified object was shot down on Saturday, according to officials. This one over the Yukon in Canada. The object first detected Friday night, Canadian and U.S. planes scrambling to scope it out. President Biden speaking to Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, giving the green light for a U.S. F-22 fighter jet to take the shot. Trudeau thanking the long-standing partnership that monitors the sky and the sea, writing, quote, "Thank you to NORAD for keeping the watch over North America."
I also spoke with President Biden and confirmed together that we will continue to do everything necessary to protect the sovereignty of our shared North American airspace.
Saturday's incident comes just one day after a U.S. fighter jet shot down a similar object over Alaska. The military and FBI are now working to recover that object. It also comes on the heels of the U.S. shooting down a suspected Chinese spy balloon off the coast of South Carolina on February 4th after it transversed the United States.
Shooting the balloon down in the Atlantic once it flew over all the military bases, including my own Fort Campbell, Kentucky. It's very disturbing. I'm glad this administration's taken it more seriously with respect to the balloons, but we've got a whole lot bigger problem with China than the spy balloon.
But Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer defended the Biden administration's handling of the situation.
We're going to probably be able to piece together this whole surveillance balloon and know exactly what's going on. So that's a huge coup for the United States.
Schumer says the U.S. gained intelligence information from surveilling that balloon. Elwin Lopez.
All right, so that's what they had to say about this. So it does appear that this is, in fact, the same object. The one that Trudeau talked about shooting down is the same one as the one that flew over Huron. Let's read a bit more of this. This actually does appear to be a transcript of what it was that we just listened to. So I don't know where all these balloons are coming from. It does appear that there is some level of distraction that's going on here. And I know people are talking about that the balloons are the big news, but I mean, we'll be talking about the trains in just a moment. When's the last time we heard anything on the debt ceiling from the mainstream news? Because that's out there, that's hanging out there. I actually don't have anything on the debt ceiling today, but I know that that's something we need to continue discussing. The thing in Ukraine is just, it's not as popular anymore either. That's another thing to pay attention to as we go. So, a few things that are happening with that. Let's grab one from the Department of Defense themselves. Efforts underway to recover object downed over Lake Huron. From David Vergen. Efforts are underway to recover remnants of an object shot down yesterday over Lake Huron by a U.S. fighter jet, the third object downed over North America since U.S. missiles took down a Chinese surveillance balloon on February 4th. So we are on 3. Air Force General Glenn Van Herk, commander of the North American Aerospace Defense Command, and U.S. Northern Command confirmed the latest incident at a briefing yesterday. Radar at the North American Aerospace Defense Command, better known as NORAD, first detected the airborne object at around 4:45 p.m. Saturday, when it was in Canadian airspace about 70 miles north of the U.S. border. NORAD is a U.S.-Canada organization with the mission of aerospace warning, aerospace control, and maritime warning for North America. Aerospace warning includes the detection, validation, and warning of an attack against North America, whether by aircraft, missiles, or space vehicles, through mutual support arrangements with other commands. The object entered the airspace over Montana and drifted eastward before being taken down at 2:42 p.m. yesterday by a U.S. AIM-9X Sidewinder missile. Additionally, objects were shot down over Alaska and northwest Canada on Friday and Saturday. In light of the People's Republic of China balloon that we took down last Saturday, we have been more closely scrutinizing our airspace at these altitudes, including enhancing our radar, which may at least partly explain the increase in objects we've detected over the past week. Melissa Dalton, Assistant Secretary of Defense for Homeland Defense and Hemispheric Affairs, said. So, I don't think that this is aliens. Some of the craft is actually a little bit odd to see. Octagonal, cylindrical. But I don't think this is aliens. Some people are suggesting this is copycats. There are people that are suggesting that these are not necessarily Chinese in nature, the last three, which is a possibility. But there's also a possibility that it is, or another Western nation that's coming out here trying to say, hey, if China can do it, we can do it too. There's so much that's up in the air about this. But I also noticed that, I mean, after the sharp criticism that came for the Biden admin over the first balloon, that they're not screwing around with this one. They're not waiting around to see what it does and try to get it off the coast. As soon as they got a shot, they're taking it. So, and I don't know what's in any of these either. I don't think we're going to ever find out what's in any of these. I know they're taking the recovery, but I mean, they're not going to tell us any of that. The White House has released a statement following the U.S. Air Force shooting down of objects over Canada. I don't know why he's got a Chinese flag behind him. I don't know if that's an editorial decision by the Daily Wire, but this is from Daily Wire News. We don't have an actual link to the statement, but the White House released a statement Saturday giving details about a call that Joe Biden had with Justin Trudeau following a military operation that Canada allowed the U.S. military to conduct in its airspace. The object was closely tracked and monitored by North American Aerospace Defense Command over the last 24 hours, and the president has been continually briefed by his national security team since the object was detected. The White House's readout of the call said, out of abundance of caution and at the recommendation of their militaries, President Biden and Prime Minister Trudeau authorized it to be taken down. President Biden authorized U.S. fighter aircraft assigned to NORAD to conduct the operation, and a U.S. F-22 shot down the object in Canadian territory in close coordination with Canadian authorities. Does Canada, and this is an honest question, this is not me taking a dig at Canada, does Canada have an air force? And I legitimately don't know. I found out like 2 years ago that Canada even had a military. I didn't know that either. I thought that they might. But I've never heard of a Canadian military operation, so I didn't know if they actually did or not. And yeah, they actually do, surprisingly enough. The incident over Canada comes after the U.S. military shot down an unidentified object over Alaskan airspace on Friday afternoon. The object, the size of a small car, was flying at 40,000 feet with a cylindrical shape over U.S. territorial water when it was shot down. The North American Aerospace Defense Command and the U.S. Northern Command released a statement over the incident on Saturday. Recovery operations continue today near Dead Horse, Alaska. U.S. Northern Command's Alaska Command and the Alaska National Guard, in close coordination with the Federal Bureau of Investigation and local law enforcement, are conducting search and recovery activities, the statement said. Arctic weather conditions, including wind chill, snow, and limited daylight, are a factor in this operation, and personnel will adjust recovery operations to maintain safety. U.S. officials said the recovery operations were happening on sea ice, and there was not any additional information at this time about the object, including its capabilities, purpose, or origin. The Federal Bureau of Investigation continues to assist recovery on site and take custody of debris arriving at onshore locations. The statement concluded, "Sea states February 10th permitted dive and underwater unmanned vehicles activities and the retrieval of additional debris from the sea floor. The public may see U.S. Navy vessels moving to and from the site as they conduct and offload and resupply activities. Operations will continue as weather permits." So, whatever it is, they're going after it. And again, there's an equal chance that this is some either nutjob or genius in this country that's launching these things. But we won't find out about that unless it's a mega terrorist. That is what we have there. You know that one. Oh, no, don't shut down. I saw the little white bar show up in the bottom of the chat over there. I'm like, no, don't shut down. I don't know why we keep having internet issues here. I'm actually going to skip this one. The FAA abruptly cancels National Defense Airspace over Lake Michigan after reporting potential contact. This is from Fox News' Anders Hagstrom. The Federal Aviation Admin has abruptly canceled a National Defense Airspace over part of Lake Michigan, the organization announced on Sunday. The FAA says it closed down the area to allow the U.S. military to examine a potential contact that was soon determined not to be a threat. The FAA last established a National Defense Airspace over Montana this weekend in reaction to an unidentified flying object. Pilots who do not adhere to the following procedure may be intercepted, detained, and interviewed by law enforcement or security personnel. The FAA wrote in an initial Sunday announcement, adding that such pilots may face deadly force in the air. Boy, if that doesn't sound like there's a cover-up going on, holy crap. Don't get too close, otherwise we're going to shoot you down. We don't want you to see this and go tell the American people what it is. The FAA briefly closed some airspace over Lake Michigan to support the Department of Defense activities. That airspace has been reopened, the FAA wrote in a statement to Fox News Digital. Which, given what's going on with this and some of these suspicions as well, I mean, there have been all kinds of, like, they call it the Chinese balloon a spy balloon. Which is probably an apt comparison. But, I mean, realistically, if this is a hostile or foreign actor, there's so many other things that it could be. A bomb, a biovirus. And again, this is if we take everything at face value. A nuclear weapon. Or an EMP. One of the big things that people keep bringing up is an EMP, because that's been basically the fear porn since the beginning of the Trump admin. It wasn't the fact that they were going to come down and nuke a city or something. It was the fact that they were going to go detonate a nuke 100 miles up in the air. And the EMP that came from the nuke, while it wouldn't actually hurt anybody, would put major cities back into the Stone Age. Which is fine. I mean, I know how to survive without having the electronics. It would suck. It definitely would. But I could make it. I mean, a lot of you could too. And again, it wouldn't be the same kind of life that we're accustomed to, but I think a lot of us could make it at least. Enough to pass on our genetics, at least. A little bit of an answer what happened there. Coming from the Blaze, radar anomaly triggers airspace closure. Senator warns of EMP risks amid balloon unmanned craft incidences. From Michelle Blood. The FAA issued a temporary flight restriction over a portion of Montana on Saturday, briefly classifying the area as National Defense Airspace. The FAA issued the notice to air missions, formerly notice to airmen, at 3:20 p.m. local time that covered airspace over Havre, Montana. The TFR was lifted about an hour later. Saturday evening, the North American Aerospace Defense Command and U.S. Northern Command issued a statement attributing the issue to a radar anomaly. NORAD detected a radar anomaly and sent fighter aircraft to investigate, the agency said in a press release. Those aircraft did not identify any object to correlate to the radar hits, the agency said, adding that they will continue to monitor the situation. The NOTAM warned the pilots who violated the TFR may be intercepted, detained, interviewed, or killed. Ron Johnson, the world's worst Republican senator, said in a statement, and that's a competition too. He's got to compete with the likes of Mitt Romney and Mitch McConnell and Little Marco and people like that, and Ted Cruz. But I still think he takes the top. But that might be closeness bias because he actually is my senator and he sucks. I've been warning for years about the risk of high-altitude nuclear blasts, Ron Johnson told Fox News Channel's Maria Bartiromo on Sunday morning. So, Like, nothing bad has happened. Nobody's died. We haven't had a bioweapon happen. But it is interesting to think about what they could put onto these things. From the Daily Wire, and this is the last one we have on the UFOs. Then we're going to go talk about trains, but not the kind that Pete Buttigieg likes. The kind that Pete Buttigieg ignores, actually. Top U.S. Air Force general makes shocking remarks about unidentified object shot down by U.S. military. From Ryan Saavedra. By the way, when I was a kid, that's what I wanted to do when I grew up. And then these happened. Which is lame. Man, that's sexy. U.S. Air Force General Glenn Van Herk, the commander who oversees North American airspace, did not rule out aliens. When asked about the unidentified object shot down over North American airspace in recent days. The comments come after U.S. military shot down an unidentified object over Lake Huron on Sunday, one over Canada on Saturday, and one Friday over Alaska. When asked if the U.S. military had ruled out extraterrestrial origin, the unidentified objects, Van Herk responded, "I'll let the intel community and the counterintelligence community figure that one out. I haven't ruled out anything. At this point, we continue to assess every threat or potential threat unknown that approaches North America with an attempt to identify it." Van Herk continued. The Air Force F-16 fighter jet shot down the unidentified octagonal object over Lake Huron using a Sidewinder missile. An anonymous U.S. defense official later told Reuters no indication of aliens or extraterrestrial activity with these recent takedowns. Well, and I will always be curious about that because, I mean, balloons don't typically go into an octagon. In fact, I don't know of a lot of things out there that we have that can fly that are an octagon. So I question that part of the narrative. I don't know what's real, obviously. I'm not in the plane. Van Herk said the U.S. officials seemed confident that the objects were not balloons. "I'm not going to categorize them as balloons. We're calling them objects for a reason," Van Herk said. "I'm not able to categorize how they stay aloft. It could be a gaseous type of balloon inside a structure, or it could be some type of propulsion system. But clearly, they're able to stay aloft." Van Herk said the U.S. officials considered trying to use the fighter jet's machine guns to shoot down the object so that the objects would be better preserved after they were shot down. Yeah, typically a 7.62 makes less of a mess than a Sidewinder. We assessed taking a gunshot yesterday in that event as well as today, and the pilots in each situation felt that they were really unachievable because of the size, especially yesterday, and the altitude, and also because of the challenges to acquire it visually, because it's so small, Van Herk said. Look, wait, I don't know if I have wild enough hair to do this impression, but look, I'm not saying it was aliens, but it was aliens. Alright. Tell me in the chat what you guys think that these are. I don't know. Again, my big thing is I'm not up there. I'm not flying the plane. Regretfully. And I haven't seen it for myself, but you know, there are certain things that we're supposed to accept without seeing them for ourselves, like the Osama bin Laden body. Sometimes I even question if something is coming down from there, but I guess people have seen it actually come down, so we can't argue that one. But let's shift gears here, go out of the air and go onto the ground, and talk about Ohio. From CNN Health to begin with. After a train derailment, Ohio residents are living the plot of a movie they helped to make. I have no idea what they're talking about because I've only ever seen 5 movies in my life. From Brenda Goodman and Kyla Russell. When Ben Ratner's family signed up in the 2021 to be extras in the movie White Noise, they thought it would be a fun distraction from their day-to-day life in blue-collar East Palestine, Ohio. Ratner, 37, in a traffic jam scene, sitting in a line of cars trying to evacuate after a freight train collided with a tanker truck, triggering an explosion that fills the air with dangerous toxins. In another scene, his father wears a trench coat and hat while people walk across an overpass to get out of town. Directors told the group that wanted to take them to look forlorn and downtrodden as they escape environmental disaster. The 2022 movie, which I've never even heard of, was shot around Ohio and is based on the novel by Don DeLillo. The book was published in 1985, shortly after a chemical disaster in Bhopal, India, that killed nearly 4,000 people. The book and film follow the fictional Gladney family, a couple and their 4 kids, as they flee an airborne toxic event, which, by the way, is an awesome band, and then return home to try to resume their normal lives. That should be a thing I like this week. Airborne Toxic Event. I haven't listened to them in forever. Ratner tried to rewatch the movie a few days ago and found that he couldn't finish it. All of a sudden, it hit too close to home, he said. Ratner and his family, his wife Lindsay, and their kids, Lily, Izzy, Simon, and Brody, are living the fiction they helped bring to the screen. Officials ordered them to evacuate their home last week, a day after a Norfolk Southern train carrying 20 cars of hazardous material slid off the rails and caught fire, threatening to explode. The National Transportation Safety Board is still investigating the cause of the incident. The first half of the movie is almost exactly what's going on here, Ratner said Wednesday, 4 days into the evacuation. In a way, the movie's provided a point of grim humor about the situation facing the residents of East Palestine, the joke no one wanted to make. Everybody's been talking about that, Ratner said, of his friends and neighbors who are keeping in close touch through the crisis. I actually made a meme where I superimposed my face on the poster and sent it to my friends. Nice. That's actually kind of awesome. Scholars who study DeLillo's work say they're not surprised by the collision of life and art. His work is often described as prescient, said Jesse Cavaldo, an English professor in Maryville, in St. Louis, and president at the Don DeLillo Society. The terrible spill is now, of course, a coincidence. But it plays into our minds like life imitating art, which was imitating life, and on, because, as DeLillo suggests, in White Noise as well, we have unfortunately become too acquainted with the mediated language and enactment of disaster, Cavaldo said. So, that's a little bit of the human interest side of this, but we've actually got to talk about what's happening here. So, as has been pointed out by a few commentators today, we didn't know about this when it happened. Like, it barely got any press coverage at all. This is a week-old story. But now some of the things, including the handling of this, are going to be coming into play. Let's read from CBS. A video appears to show the Ohio train on fire 20 miles before it derailed, so there were problems going on before this. And I do question sabotage. I really do. Come on, you. Do I have to do that? Is that what I have to do? Okay, apparently we're not going to watch that video. Watch, I pop out of the next tab and it starts playing again. Look at that. Look at that. That's a minute clip. We're going to watch this minute clip. That is gnarly. The sad guitar music. I know Steven would be commenting on that.
I got arrested because I was trying to do a live report about what people need to know.
So a reporter was arrested yesterday while doing a live report on the recent train derailment in Ohio. News Nation correspondent Evan Lambert said he was held for 5 hours after being pushed to the ground and handcuffed. A cameraman said officers had asked Lambert to stop talking, then told him to leave while the governor was beginning his news conference. He was announcing that evacuation orders around the derailment site were being lifted.
Time now for a look at your Thursday weather.
That's gnarly. I'm glad that actually started auto playing. But let's read here from Julia Jacob. There were more toxic chemicals on the train that derailed in Ohio than originally reported, data shows. From Julia Jacobo. There were more toxic chemicals aboard the train that derailed in Ohio than originally reported, new data shows. State health officials were initially concerned about the presence of vinyl chloride, a highly volatile, colorless gas produced for commercial uses, which spilled after about 50 cars on a Norfolk Southern Railroad train derailed in East Palestine, Ohio, on February 3rd while traveling from Illinois to Pennsylvania. Other toxins like phosgene and hydrogen chloride were emitted in large plumes of smoke during a controlled release and burn, prompting officials to issue mandatory evacuation orders in a 1-mile radius of the crash site. A list of cars that were involved in the derailment and the products that they were carrying, released by Norfolk Southern, reveals several more toxic chemicals that were released into the air and soil following the crash. I'm a little more concerned about what this does downstream. Now, I'm north of this, but people like Arvold are down the Mississippi from, and I don't know where East Palestine is. I should probably go figure that out at this point. But does this get into the Ohio River? Does this stream downstream into the Mississippi? Let's find out. Let's get the map up. Leak Oil Company temporarily closed. I'm sure East Palestine High School is probably also temporarily closed. So, I mean, and this is just a tiny little map dot too, by the way. But it doesn't seem like this goes into the... Oh, it does go... if it goes south, then it does appear that there's some downhill there. It might get into the Ohio River and then flow out down into Kentucky, etc. and get into other waterways too. So, I mean, there's a lot more to this than just what we're seeing. And it is a bit terrifying to me. You guys probably don't know this about me. I might have said it on Contemporary before, but I don't think I've ever not lived near a train track. I guess for the brief amount of time when I was living with my aunt in Kenosha, that wasn't near a train track, but I think that's the only time. And that was always just a temporary situation while I went and looked for something else. Like when I first got back from Boston, I did that for a couple months. I've never long-term lived far away from a train track. I can hear the train whistle from here. And when the trains go by, just over there, I can hear it. It was right across the street from the house I grew up in. Like, directly across the street from the house I grew up in. Where I lived in Kenosha for the majority of the time that I was there, it was pretty much right across the street and a block away. I guess it was a little ways away when I lived in Redacted, where I used to live. But still close enough. Like, you guys could hear in the morning, if I had the windows open, you could hear the train whistle. I know it picked up on the microphone because people commented about it. Boston, I obviously live near a train track. I live right next to the metro. So I've always lived near a rail line. And for the most part, they've always been freight rail. So this is actually a distinct possibility of something that could happen to me. That could completely screw my life up. Where's the rail line, by the way? Yeah. The rail line comes down through town through here. And crosses under 165. Let's see. State health officials were initially concerned about the presence of vinyl chloride, a highly volatile colorless gas produced for commercial uses, which spilled after 50 cars on a Norfolk Southern Rail train derailed in East Palestine. While traveling from Illinois to Pennsylvania, other toxins like phosgene and hydrogen chloride were emitted in large plumes of smoke during the controlled release and burn, prompting officials to issue mandatory evacuation orders in a 1-mile radius of the crash site, which, by the way, hydrogen chloride, HCl, hydrochloric acid, if it dilutes, becomes liquid. A list of the cars that were involved in the derailment and the products they were carrying, released by Norfolk Southern, reveals several more toxic chemicals that were released into the air and soil following the crash. Among them were ethylene glycol, monobutyl ether, ethyl hexyl acrylate, nail polish remover, and isobutylene were also in the rail cars that were derailed. The list shows. Contact with ethyl hexyl acrylate, a carcinogen, can cause burning and irritation of the eyes, skin, and inhalation can irritate the nose and throat, causing shortness of breath and coughing, according to the CDC. Inhalation of isobutylene can cause dizziness and drowsiness, while exposure to ethylene glycol monobutyl ether can cause irritation in the eyes, skin, nose, and throat, as well as hematuria, or blood in the urine, nervous system depression, headache, and vomiting, according to the CDC. Man, this reads like a Pfizer advertisement at the end. The toxins that burned in the wreckage had the potential to be deadly if officials did not order evacuations in the region, experts told the ABC News last week. However, once the controlled burn was complete, the only risk of coming into contact with the toxins was if they were embedded in the soil, which then had to be dug out. Kevin Christ, professor of chemical and biomolecular engineering and director of Ohio University's Air Quality Center, told ABC News last week. Yeah, see, I don't believe you. When you say that hydrocarbons can stay in the atmosphere forever, you sit here and expect me to believe that just a little bit of controlled burn takes all of these off? Are you dumb? The evacuation orders for the residents in East Palestine were lifted on Wednesday after the air and water samples that were collected in the region were deemed safe. The EPA has not detected any concerning levels of toxins in the air quality that can be attributed to the crash since the controlled burn was complete, the agency announced on Sunday. I don't believe you either. And we are about to say goodbye to Instagram, so thank you for joining over on that side, and check out the channel. Link in the description. Take care. Alright, they're gone. Now we can talk about them. Residents still may smell odors from the site, the EPA said, suggesting that those experiencing any symptoms should call their medical provider. You should call your medical provider anyway. And by the way, that is if you're anywhere downstream, downwind, or down soil from this, downhill from this. Go get your physical now, because there's going to be a class action lawsuit for this. And it's going to be bad, and you're going to want to get your part of it. But the question here is, why didn't we hear about this for a week? From the blaze, we basically nuked a town. Animals dying in Ohio after train derailment, and a controlled release of toxic chemicals. From Joseph McKinnon. The freight train that derailed February 3rd in East Palestine may not have exploded outright as some had feared, but still managed to expel various toxic chemicals. While officials have suggested that the deadly chemicals and the smoke that darken the sky over the village do not pose a threat to human beings, some locals are not convinced, particularly as their animals have taken ill and some have perished. According to the NTSB member Michael Graham, the Norfolk Southern train was carrying 141 loaded cars, 9 empty cars, and 3 locomotives. Around 50 cars went off the tracks. Graham suggests the suspected cause of the derailment was mechanical issues on one of the rail car axles. A wheel bearing may have overheated, leading to a fire and in turn the derailment, reported WKBN. The Pittsburgh Post-Gazette obtained video that shows what appears to be sparks and flames beneath the train as it passed an equipment plant in Salem, Ohio, approximately 20 miles from where the train ultimately went off the rails. Let's have a look at this.
Tonight, pretty stunning video raising a lot of questions, especially for people in East Palestine, Ohio. As you can see, sparks and flames underneath this Norfolk Southern train, and this was 20 miles before it derailed. The derailment, as we all now know, sent dangerous chemicals into the air and forced thousands of people from their homes for days.
Now the question is, when did the crew know that there was a problem?
This video, obtained by our news partners at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, was taken by a security camera at an equipment manufacturing plant in Salem, Ohio, some 20 miles from East Palestine. You can see...
I guess I wouldn't know where to call initially if you saw a problem like that, but wouldn't you think there'd be a number to call or something? And again, growing up next to and always living next to railroad tracks, I guess I don't know that either, but I would think that somewhere, somehow, there'd be a way to report that and get this thing stopped if there's a problem.
See what appear to be sparks or flames under one of the cars as it passes the plant. The NTSB referenced the video at a news conference earlier this week.
We have obtained 2 videos which show preliminary indications of mechanical issues on one of the rail car axles.
That second video came from a processing plant a mile down the track, also in Salem. In front of that plant is a hot box detector, which scans the temperature of the axles as the train passes and sounds an alert if they're overheated.
The crew did receive an alarm from a wayside defect detector shortly before the derailment, indicating a mechanical issue. Then an emergency brake application initiated.
The NTSB says there was an alert, but it is not known if it came from the hot box detector in Salem or the next one down the track 20 miles away in East Palestine, where that derailment happened. And if the alert wasn't triggered when the train passed Salem, why not? I spoke today with a retired Norfolk Southern engineer, Scott Wilcox, who lives in Avonmore.
How would that person know there was an issue?
Generally speaking, after the length of the train has passed over the detector, it will tell you there are no problems found.
The NTSB has obtained the train's data recorder and audio recordings. Those are being analyzed at an NTSB lab in Washington, D.C.
Now, the agency is also checking whether all the detectors were working.
Yeah, this actually does raise some more questions for me because, I mean, again, we see clearly the sparks and the flames in Salem. And yet we didn't know. Here's the thing about wheel bearings. And I do take some of this with my knowledge of being in mechanical field for most of my adult life. I think most of you guys know, but people actually still question. They think that I went to school for political science and political analysis. No, I went to mechanic school. But one thing that I know from working on wheel bearings, I've changed a lot of wheel bearings, is that you get a lot of warning before you get to the point that we saw earlier in the video. Let's back up and watch this again.
Obtained by our news partners at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette was taken by a security.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you right off the bat that there is a lot of warning from when a problem happens where it's detectable that there's overheating in the bearing, and when you get to that point. And I'm going to tell you that probably, if this is 20 miles before the derail, that's been going like that for probably a few days. Definitely a few hours. But there was a bearing problem that, and if they actually pass over these hot boxes like this, somebody knew that there was a bearing problem long before this happened. I've seen a roach bearing that started a fire. And honestly, it's typically on the brake. It's not on the bearings themselves. It can happen, and I've seen it happen on bearing, but it's rare, exceedingly. Typically in a heavy truck, if you get a fire in an axle like that, it's because you had oil leak past the seal somewhere. And then when the truck started to brake, it got hot. And again, you knew this long before you got to this point. There is, and I say this, I've said this about the spy balloon. I've said this about the debt ceiling. There's more to the story than we know. There's more to the story than we're telling. I said this about Tyree Nichols. There's more to the story than they're telling us. There is a point in this story that they're not telling us. Because you don't just go from bearing issue to fire in a mile, in 20 miles. It just doesn't happen that way. If you told me 100 miles, I'd believe you. The thick column of smoke that darkened the sky above East Palestine after the derailment contained fumes from the toxic chemicals stored in the wrecked cars, such as vinyl chloride, hydrogen chloride, and phosgene. WKBN reported the Environmental Protection Agency cautioned Norfolk Southern that an additional 3 chemicals were aboard the breached and derailed trains: ethylene glycol monobutyl, ether, ethyl hexyl acrylate, and isobutylene. Silverado Caggiano. That is an awesome name. I want to name one of my kids Silverado. No, I'm not a GM guy anymore. That's awesome. A hazmat specialist told WKBN that ethyl hexyl acrylate is a carcinogen that can cause burning and irritation in the skin and eyes, as well as breathing problems. He noted that isobutylene can also cause dizziness and drowsiness if inhaled. Ashok Kumar, a civil and environmental engineering professor at the University of Toledo, told ABC News that phosgene fume inhalation could result in chest constriction and choking. The Blaze previously reported that Norfolk Southern, under the supervision of purported experts and first responders, performed a controlled breach of several rail cars. This video has no sound. Breathe deep, the gathering gloom. I used to know that poem by heart, by the way. The reasoning behind the controlled release of the deadly chemicals was to avert a catastrophic tanker failure that could have resulted in a massive explosion, throwing fumes and shrapnel a far distance. Pretty sure that was a risk with a controlled burn, too. The controlled releases were deemed low level, however the aforementioned health consequences are still possible, suggested Kumar, in addition to various cancers resultant of encounters with long-term carcinogens like vinyl fluoride. Some precautions that you really obviously should be taken here. From WBNS, Ohio train derailment prompts water utility to take precautions. And this is all the way in West Virginia, by the way. So the mountain mamas don't get sick. Coming to WBNS from the Dissociated Press. A West Virginia water utility is enhancing its water treatment process as a precaution, following the derailment of a train hauling chemicals that later sent up a toxic plume in Ohio. Yeah, how do you think that affected the greenhouse gases, by the way? West Virginia American Water said Sunday it's also going to install a secondary intake on the Guyandotte River in case there's a need to switch to an alternative water source. The utility noted that there hasn't been any change in raw water at its Ohio River intake. The health and safety of our citizens is a priority, and there are currently no drinking water advisories in place for customers, the company said in a statement. You might still want to go buy bottled. I heard if you got the vax, then yeah, that's probably against YouTube TOS. I'm not going to go there. I had a good one in response to what Randy said, but yeah, that's probably going to ding me on TOS. The health and safety of our customers is a priority, and there are currently no drinking water advisories, the company said. And then a review of what happened. So, and that's probably a good idea. If you're anywhere near the Ohio River, you should buy bottled for a little while. Another one from the Dissociated Press, directly this time. Toxic gases connected to an Ohio train derailment cause concern. From Brittany Peterson and Seth Borenstein. Days after crews released and burned toxic chemicals transported by a wrecked train in Ohio, residents remain concerned about the toxic substances that could be lingering in their evacuated neighborhoods. That's probably a fair concern. What is vinyl chloride? The gas is used to make the polyvinyl chloride, hard plastic resin, and plastic products. It's found in products such as credit cards, furniture, and car parts. But it's most notably used in PVC plastic piping, a common material for plumbing. Vinyl chloride is associated with the increased risk of liver cancer and other cancers, according to the federal government's National Cancer Institute. The effect was studied in PVC pipe makers who breathed in vinyl chloride and developed rare liver cancers, said Ruth Lunn, who studies carcinogens at the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences. If you worked longer, you had higher risks, and if your exposure levels were high, you had a higher risk, Lunn said. Officials warned that a controlled burn would send phosgene and hydrogen chloride into the air. Phosgene is highly toxic, colorless gas with a strong odor that can cause vomiting and breathing, and was used as a weapon in World War I. Yes, you know it as mustard gas. Phosgene is considered safe at 0.1 parts per million during an 8-hour exposure, or 0.2 parts per million during a 15-minute exposure. The 8-hour exposure threshold would have to be even lower when measuring the inside of people's homes, where residents often spend more than 8 consecutive hours. So, yeah, there's a lot of concern with that. Now let's talk about the Transportation Secretary. Let's listen to him first, because it sounds like he's got something to say that has nothing to do with the train. Volume check.
With your help, 3,700 bridges that we now have getting started to be improved. Over 70,000 miles of highway, 8,000 buses, ferries, and other pieces of transit equipment. And we're just getting started. Woo! It's an exciting time.
That's right. That's it.
And you mentioned the EV part. Look, everybody catch the Super Bowl last night? The automakers are going to do more to literally sell electric vehicles than any policymaker can or should. That's where industry is going anyway.
Right.
But what's not going to happen anyway is for it to reach enough communities quickly enough, especially when we're thinking about charging, so that everybody can take advantage of it, especially as EVs become more and more affordable. And the biggest barrier to somebody being able to save the gas money or the diesel money that you have by owning one becomes charging.
Right.
And that's where our partnership comes in. We're providing, again, more funding, but you all are going to need to put together the...
All right, I can't listen to him anymore. All right, reading on from here. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg stayed hush on the massive train derailment that occurred in Ohio earlier this month as he celebrated the Biden admin's infrastructure investments on Monday. Speaking at the National Association of Counties conference, Buttigieg praised ongoing infrastructure projects across the nation, calling it an exciting time to watch the $1.2 trillion bipartisan infrastructure law roll out over the transportation sector. However, many were waiting for the Transportation Secretary to address the recent events that happened in Ohio. Although people have since returned to their homes and no one died in the accident, the fiery derailment has drawn the attention to the dangerous working conditions of railroad employees and raised concerns about the lasting ecological damage of the explosion may be. Here's one from Nita Turner. He jokes about balloons while ignoring East Palestine.
It's had its challenges.
Right.
I mean, if you look at what the American transportation systems have faced in the last 2 or 3 years, partly because of the pandemic, we've faced issues from container shipping to airline cancellations. Mm-hmm. Now we got balloons.
That's right.
When the topic of racist highways or white construction crews comes up, Secretary Buttigieg is an open book. Former GOP congressional candidate David Giglio of California tweeted, "But when an ecological disaster takes place in Ohio, he's MIA." Oh, we get to open up a new window.
To work with your community colleges, on building a workforce that reflects the community. We have heard way too many stories from generations past of infrastructure where you got a neighborhood, often a neighborhood of color, that finally sees the project come to them, but everyone in the hard hats on that project looking like, doing the good paying jobs, don't look like they came from anywhere near the neighborhood.
Right.
You can build community wealth that will help close wealth gaps in this country if we can tear down those barriers. But that happens at the delivery level. To work with your contractors.
Yeah, he'll talk about that all the time. Former Rep. Myra Flores, a Texas Republican, asked on Monday, "Where is Pete Buttigieg? How will this Ohio train derailment affect our farmers, the nearby population, and our American supply chain?" Yeah, that's another thing to pay attention to, because that's farm country. And I do wonder, now, it's all covered in snow or probably mud right now. But what will happen during planting season and harvest season too? And it's surprising to me, by the way, that he is ignoring this, because Mayor Pete loves trains. Man, he loves trains. That's all that I heard from the beginning of why he got appointed transportation secretary. He loves trains. I really think Joe misunderstood him when that was being explained to him. Alright, as far as the train goes, I'm going to say right now, if you're within 100 miles of the area, maybe more than that, maybe go 200 miles, buy a bottle, be wary about what your tap water smells like, tastes like, boil before doing anything else, but that's not going to take the toxins out of it, so... And you've got a lot to worry about. I wouldn't go back right now. Alright. Let's shift gears here. Let's go talk Trump. Yay. First, coming off a tweet, and I've got the article queued up next. Philip Holloway, who is apparently a lawyer, because he's Bill Holloway, Esquire. Parts of the Trump grand jury report to be released, which are going to be the parts that fit the narrative, just so you know. The parts that make it harder for him to run for president. Introduction and conclusion, and Section 8, in which the grand jury discusses the concern that some witnesses may have lied under oath. Hang on to your hat, my sources say the DA intends to indict Trump. Walls are closing in, they got him this time. It's going to happen this time, we believe us, it's actually going to happen this time. I'm going to tell you right off the bat, until I actually see the indictment come down, I don't believe it's going to happen. Plain and simple. But also, Philip Holloway, the last line. My sources say the DA intends to indict Trump. Well, yeah, the DA, several DAs across the country have intended to indict Trump. From the moment he walked down the escalator, they just haven't found a crime that they could pin to him yet. But reading from WSB TV, Fulton County judge rules that parts of Trump's grand jury report to be released. From WSBTV.com news staff, a Fulton County judge ordered the partial release of a special purpose grand jury's final report involving allegations of criminal tampering with Georgia's 2020 election and former President Trump's possible involvement. Channel 2's Richard Elliott was at the state capitol Monday, where there was a lot of buzz about the ruling but few comments. Fulton County District Attorney Fannie Willis was at the Capitol Monday to testify before the Georgia Senate Judiciary Committee about her support for a bill aimed at combating Georgia's gang problem. Elliott asked her about the order that authorizes a partial release of the special purpose grand jury's final report, and she said, "I'm pleased with it." Willis originally asked that he not release the report at all, but Willis said that she was satisfied by his decision. "I thought that he listened to the arguments of the state and that his order basically did what we asked. So I'm very pleased with the order," Willis said. The special purpose grand jury investigated the potential criminal tampering with Georgia's 2020 election that included Trump's phone call with Brad Raffensperger to a state Senate subcommittee hearing where Trump's then attorney, Giuliani, made claims of massive statewide voter fraud. Those claims were all debunked. I'm gonna debunk! By multiple investigations. And again, I mean, you're not gonna get the whole thing. You're gonna get the parts that rile up the left. You're gonna get the parts that make them say, "Why hasn't he been indicted yet?" We'll get a new Dash video. I'm gonna play it and we're gonna laugh. And then, I mean, if history repeats itself, then nothing's gonna come out of it after that. Some classified document stuff. I got a pair in a row from CNN. Trump's lawyer says searches for classified material at Trump properties are complete. From Paula Reed and Zachary Cohen. One of Trump's lawyers said Sunday that they have completed their searches for classified material at the former president's properties and handed over what they found to the DOJ. Tim Parlator, who represents Trump on both the special counsel investigation into the former president's handling of classified material and the probe related to the January 6 selfie fest, confirmed that the additional classified documents were found during the search in December and turned over to the DOJ. We've tried to do searches of all the relevant places, and anytime we found anything, we've immediately turned it over, Parlator told CNN in an exclusive interview, painting his client as cooperative in the ongoing criminal probe. He's also confirmed that Trump's team handed over to the DOJ an empty manila folder marked classified. Evening summary after receiving a subpoena for that item, which was found in the former president's bedroom. According to Parlator, Trump had effectively been using the empty folder as a lampshade to block a light on his landline telephone that was keeping him up at night. Really? There was nothing else you could use? You're worth $1.2 billion. That was the only thing you could find to do that? And a classified folder on top of that? He has one of those landlines next to his bed and has a blue light on it, and it keeps him up at night. So he took the manila folder and put it over so it would keep the light down so he could sleep at night, Parlator said. It's just this folder. It says classified evening summary on it. It's not a classified marking. It's not anything that's controlled in any way. There's nothing illegal about it. Illegal? No. Stupid? Yeah. Oh, hang on. We're going to save that for tomorrow. Let's see. CNN reported Friday that the folder was among the items that Trump's legal team had turned over to prosecutors in recent months, in addition to more materials with classified markings and a laptop belonging to an aide. Parlator also reiterated Sunday that the aide had no idea the material the aide scanned on the laptop was classified. Pressed on why classified documents were still being found at Trump's properties 2 years after he was president, Parlator... Back up. You literally found stuff that was classified in the Biden home from the 70s. Parlator blamed the White House procedure for handling sensitive material when an admin leaves office, equating the situation involving his client to those of former Vice President Pence and President Joe Biden. That's actually going to be an interesting case, by the way. I'm going to skip the next CNN article because of the fact that they're covering this. But that actually is going to raise an interesting point on this. Because Biden is saying, the buck stops here, Biden is saying that this was all about his aides and the way that they packaged everything up. And if he can get away with it, then the Donald can get away with it too. It does set an interesting precedent if people let Biden slide because of the fact that, I didn't even know what was happening, man, it was just my aides. Yeah, the FBI raided him and took it all. Why did they fail to get everything? That's a good question. And we know they went to the bedroom because they took all Melania's underwear. Which means they probably saw the little folder being used as a shade. That is a fair question. Alright. On the other side of the aisle. Former spy chief accuses Politico of distorting the letter on Hunter Biden's laptop. From Daniel Chayton. Former Director of National Security James Clapper accused Politico of deliberately misrepresenting the letter he and 50 other intelligence veterans signed regarding the Hunter laptop story. Clapper, who served as the nation's spy chief during the Obama admin, said the letter did not assert that the reporting on the laptop was part of a Russian disinformation operation, a notion that Politico peddled with the headline when first reporting the existence of the letter. There was message distortion, Clapper told the Washington Post fact-checker. All we were doing was raising a yellow flag that this could be Russian disinformation. Politico deliberately distorted what we said. It was clear in paragraph 5. Yeah, but nobody read the letter. That's the problem, Jim Clapper. Nobody read the letter. They just took the Politico headline and plastered it all over Twitter and say, oh, the laptop? That's Russian. That's disinformation. Are you a Russian? And I remember the letter too, by the way, because they talked about it all the time. I don't know why it's taking him so long to come back out and say this. The laptop scandal is almost 3 years old at this point. But at least some of the truth is coming out now. Let's see. Let's talk about the architect of the Capitol, because I don't know anything about this. We are running up on the clock too, and by the way, if you're on the YouTube side, do consider going over and checking out the Porch Boys video game stream with Midget B tonight. It's going to be an awesome time. I'll be joining you there as well, in spirit, because I'll just be listening along while I cook dinner and eat dinner, but do go over there and check that out and hassle him. He needs it. He needs to be reminded that he sucks at video games. This is from Emily Brooks. House Speaker McCarthy called for the architect of the Capitol, Brett Blanton, to step down or be removed by President Biden, adding to bipartisan outrage over an Inspector General report that found that he misused a government vehicle and allegedly impersonated a law enforcement officer, among other ethics issues. The architect of the Capitol, Brett Blanton, no longer has my confidence to continue his job. He should resign, or President Biden should remove him immediately, McCarthy said in a tweet on Monday. McCarthy joins the House Admin Committee Chairman, Brian Stile. Oh, he actually does something? Brian Stile used to be my representative, back when I lived on the other side of the state. I didn't know he actually did anything. And Ranking Member Joseph Morell, in calling for the resignation of the architect of the Capitol, oversees the Capitol complex's building, maintenance, and preservation and development. The IG report was highly concerning, which is, in part, why our first hearing was dedicated to providing oversight over the AOC. That's Architect of the Capitol, not Alexandria Ocasio-Chavez, D-Twitch. Boy, I didn't know Brian Stile actually did anything. His refusal to be transparent and truthful has made clear that he can no longer lead the organization and must resign immediately. I look forward to continuing to conduct robust oversight to ensure our government is accountable to the American people, Stiles said in a statement on Monday. Morrell called for Blanton's resignation last week. Well, yeah, and I have not seen the evidence of the crime, but no matter who appoints you, if you're using a government vehicle and impersonating a law enforcement officer, and you're not a law enforcement officer, you're in fact an architect, you're out. The IG report released in October found that Blanton and his family had misused architect of the Capitol vehicles intended for home-to-work use as personal vehicles, resulting in nearly $14,000 worth of inappropriate costs. How do you rack up 14 grand worth of charges in a government vehicle, or any vehicle for that matter? That blows my mind. I've never spent $14,000 on a vehicle outside of its initial cost in my life. What? The report also found that Blanton had been improperly identified as an off-duty cop during an incident where he chased down a hit-and-run that happened outside his residence. Blanton denied misrepresenting himself as a law enforcement, saying that it was a mistake on the part of the Fairfax County Police after Blanton identified himself as a Capitol Police Board member. Is he actually that, though? That's the question. House lawmakers grilled Blanton over a report in a House admin hearing last week where Blanton pushed back on the report. Blanton said in a hearing that he used the vehicle during an out-of-state family vacation because he was under the impression that I had to use that vehicle so he could have a quick communication with the Capitol Police Board in case of an emergency. Why does he have to talk to the Capitol Police Board? I don't get that part. I wholeheartedly reject any assertion that I engaged in unethical behavior during my service to this country, Blanton said in the hearing. So, he gone. This one. We'll listen to Kamala first, and then we'll go talk about what she's actually talking about.
No exhaust. No diesel smell. The bus has Wi-Fi and even USB outlets next to every seat. I mean, come on, imagine. You can charge your phone on your way home from work. That's good stuff. No exhaust. No diesel smell. The bus has Wi-Fi and even USB outlets next to every seat. I mean,
she is way too excited for that part of that. I mean, you can charge your phone on your way home from work. I can do that in my gas vehicle. Not very well because it's a short commute, but I can do that in my gas vehicle. You moron. From KARE 11. Kamala Harris stops in St. Cloud to discuss electric vehicles. From KARE 11 staff and Samantha Fisher. VP Harris was in St. Cloud Thursday to discuss the future of public transportation. NFI Group announced that the VP would visit the new flyer of America's facility in St. Cloud to highlight the current admin's commitment to zero-emission public transportation. Every year, gas-powered buses add millions of tons of pollution to our atmosphere. Aren't most of them run on CNG at this point? I don't know. I don't ride the bus, but I thought most of them went over to CNG and actually were curbing their emissions because of it. Because CNG runs really clean. CNG and propane both. I mean, that's why they use propane in forklifts indoors, is because you can pretty much breathe the air if you have to run it in an enclosed space. Which further accelerates our climate crisis. But there's a solution to all this, and that solution is parked right over here. These buses. Electric buses. And again, my first question on that is going to be, how do they operate in the cold? I think electric vehicles are cool. I stand in opposition to many people that watch this channel. And I think if people want to drive an electric vehicle, they should have the choice to. I don't think it should be mandated on anybody, but I think if they can afford the vehicle and they want to drive it, that should be their choice. But that being said, as far as effectiveness, I don't think we're there yet. I've seen where electric vehicles can't get all the way across the cross on a full charge when it gets cold out. They're great when it's nice out, and that's going to be my next question, is how long does the electric bus last? Harris called the vehicle a model rather of American innovation. Minnesota, this is a transformative moment, and they're doing it in Minnesota too, which gets even colder than it does here. The climate crisis has presented a historic challenge to our nation and the world. It also presents a historic opportunity to create new jobs, drive new innovation, and generate prosperity in all communities. Harris also thanked state leaders for their work to combat the climate crisis, calling Tim Walz a true champion and a partner to the Biden admin on the issue. So, they're all in on electric buses. Aren't you excited? Let's do... what do I want to do? Let's do this set here, this pair here, and then we will do rules of acquisition and head out of here today, because we'll end on good news with a little bit of bad news after that. From NPR, John Fetterman is discharged from the hospital and will return to work on Monday. From Caitlin Ratty. And remember, NPR relies on your donations. Not just your taxpayer money and your mandatory donations, but your donations as well. So hit that donate button, because they can't tell you how John Fetterman is great and Dr. Oz is evil unless you hit that donate button. So let them know what you think. NPR's Never Printing Reality, National Progressive Radio. Let's see what they have to say. John Fetterman was discharged from the George Washington University Hospital Friday afternoon. He spent Wednesday in the hospital after feeling lightheaded. Tests ruled out a stroke and found no evidence of a seizure. Fetterman's communications director, Joel Calvello, wrote in a news release. John's looking forward to spending some time with his family and returning to the Senate on Monday, Calvello said. So, he's back, and I mean, there's not much else to say about that. Everything else is stuff we already know. He started feeling unwell during the retreat. He suffered a minor stroke last year. Health issues led some to question his fitness for office. I still do. Despite issues with auditory processing and speech, his cognitive abilities remain intact. But he is back out, and, you know, as I said when I was talking about this before, I don't care for John Fetterman and his policies and his voting record. But I don't want to see him die to get out of the Senate. I want to see the voters punish him and hold him accountable. Either be forced to resign because he sucks so much, or be voted out the next time through. I don't want to see the dude die. I hope he lives a long and healthy life. Alright, and from the Blaze. This should instill a lot of confidence into Pennsylvania voters. John Fetterman hears voices like character in Peanuts cartoon whose words could never be deciphered. Report from Chris Enlow. The health problems that Fetterman experiences because of his near-fatal stroke last year are so severe that to him, voices sometimes resemble a character from the Peanuts cartoons. The New York Times revealed on Friday the severity of Fetterman's auditory processing issues is a lingering effect of his stroke. From the New York Times, a former newspaper. The most evident disability is a neurological condition that impairs his hearing. Mr. Fetterman suffers from auditory processing issues, forcing him to rely primarily on a tablet to transcribe what's being said to him. The hearing issues are inconsistent. They often get worse when he is stressful or unfamiliar situation, like being in the U.S. Senate. When it's bad, Mr. Fetterman has described it as trying to make out a muffled voice of the teacher from the Peanuts cartoon, whose words could never be deciphered. Because of his complications, the Senate has installed new technology to help Fetterman understand the proceedings in the Senate and communicate with his colleagues. Which is appreciated, by the way, and again, I don't agree with Fetterman's policies and his policy prescriptions, but I do believe in reasonable accommodation. I do. According to the Times, the Senate Sergeant-at-Arms is making similar arrangements for committee hearing rooms. Yes, you're having a debate when all you can hear is God, I wonder how that's got to work out. How does that make you feel? Pennsylvania? Alright, we're going to finish out here for the night. We'll take a look at the rest of these tomorrow. We've got some Elon stuff, some Elon drama, some Manchin drama, and some Nikki Haley drama, plus a bomb going off in England while they're trying to disarm the damn thing. We'll talk about all that tomorrow, but for now, the last thing we do on a Monday, whoops, is we read the Ferengi rules of acquisition. We see if they can apply to real life. Sometimes they can't. If they can't, then we talk about why they don't apply to real life, and we talk about the situations that they're used in and the Ferengi religion. For those who don't know, who are not Star Trek fans like myself, the Ferengi are a hyper-capitalistic society that depends on the adherence to a religion in which the ultimate end goal is to get to the national treasury, the divine treasury at the end of life, to bargain for your next life. They do believe in reincarnation, apparently. And in order to get into the divine treasury and bargain for your next life, you have to follow these rules to the T. And most Ferengi can quote them because it's a big part of their education and their religion. So we look at each of these rules. We decide whether or not they apply to real life or not, and what their situation was in the Alpha Canon. I have not read enough Beta Canon that I can apply them there, but in the Alpha Canon. So we talked about the 139th rule of acquisition. Wives serve, brothers inherit. We talked about that and the hyper-patriarchal society of the Ferengi. Now we move on to the 141st rule of acquisition. Only fools pay retail. And that should be self-explanatory in and of itself. It reminds me of a King of the Hill episode, actually. This is from the Rules of Acquisition reference book, which I don't have and I've never read. But it does remind me of a King of the Hill episode in which Hank goes in to wheel and deal with the dealer unknowing, of course, that Peggy had gone in ahead of him and wheeled and dealed the price down on the new car that she wanted to buy to be approximately $5,000, I think it was in the episode, under sticker. She wheeled and dealed hard on it. But because it's a major life purchase, she got her husband involved, and he went in there and came out bragging about the fact that he was going to pay sticker price and not a penny more. And folks, that's not what you do. Especially if you've got the leverage. There have been a couple times where I had no leverage in it, and I could still get some sort of discount knocked off on the vehicle. In spite of the fact that our car that we were coming in with was at another one of their dealerships to be used on trade with a blown engine. It's my ex-girlfriend's car. But only fools pay retail. Now, there are situations where you can't help but pay retail. Corporate, especially, which, I mean, we should be avoiding our corporate purchasing no matter what. And we all do it. I do it, you do it, and we should be avoiding it more. But we're in the situation, in a little bit more of an interpersonal situation. Perhaps when you know the person involved. Perhaps when you're in a small town especially. But when you've got the opportunity to try to change the price, to try to make everything out into your favor, when you sit down there and come between a point that will make the seller very, very rich, and the price point where you will get it for very little over cost. You come over, you find yourself in the middle. But of course, you're going to try to come back and get that down a little bit more. So yes, only fools pay retail. If you've got the opportunity, try to knock the price down a little bit. You'll be better off in the end. And with that, we're done.